Question 1. In light of recent developments in sustainability reporting, consider the case of Ista Takashi, an LCA practitioner conducting an LCA, a modular building system. He has defined a functional unit based on a 50-year service life. However, his client argues for using a 25-year cycle to align with market life. Ista Takashi wants to ensure that the results are credible for comparing two different construction systems. What should he prioritize to resolve this disagreement? A. Modify the functional unit to satisfy the client's marketing preferences. B. Choose the shortest lifespan among the alternatives to simplify modeling. C. Maintain the 50-year service life if it better reflects the intended function and system. D. Use a time-weighted average between 25 and 50 years. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. According to ISO 14044, 2006, Clause 4232, the functional unit must be defined in terms of function, not convenience or marketing needs. It serves as the reference for all data and ensures comparability. Modifying it for non-technical reasons undermines validity. A shorter or average period would bias results and conflict with goal and scope consistency. Question 2. The relationship between system boundary choices and allocation procedures in LCA is particularly critical. How can an LCA practitioner avoid the need for allocation when modeling a process involving both electricity and heat as outputs? A. Increase system boundaries to include downstream use of both outputs. B. Apply physical relationship-based allocation using energy content. C. Use economic allocation based on market prices. D. Expand the system to include substitution for heat and electricity elsewhere. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. ISO 14044, 2006, Clause 4342 prioritizes avoiding allocation by system expansion or substitution. This is known as the substitution or avoided burden method. Options B and C are acceptable allocation methods but are lower in the hierarchy. Option A may not inherently resolve the allocation issue. Question 3. When evaluating the merits of LCA characterization models, which of the following considerations is most critical in selecting the appropriate impact indicators for climate change? A. Stakeholder preferences on climate impacts. B. Relevance of indicators to the goal and scope of the LCA. C. Availability of weighting factors for interpretation. D. National environmental priorities. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. ISO 14044, 2006, Clause 442 requires that impact categories and indicators be relevant to the goal and scope of the study, while stakeholder views and national concerns matter for communication. Scientifically robust and scope-aligned indicators, e.g., global warming potential for climate change, are essential to ensure integrity of LCA results. Question 4. Based on the information gathered during the critical review of a comparative LCA study submitted to regulators, Opticon noted that assumptions on end-of-life treatment lack justification. What should the reviewer prioritize next? A. Suggest rewriting the entire goal and scope chapter. B. Verify that all assumptions are transparently documented and evaluated. C. Conduct independent modeling to validate assumptions. D. Recommend skipping end-of-life modeling to avoid uncertainty. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Clause 6.1.2 of ISO 14044 requires critical reviewers to verify transparency and completeness of assumptions, especially for comparative assertions. Independent modeling, option C, may breach impartiality. Skipping modeling, D, compromises completeness. Rewriting scope A exceeds reviewers' role unless fundamental flaws are present. Question 5. A detailed analysis of foreground and background data in an LSI reveals inconsistent units across similar unit processes. What is the best course of action before proceeding to LCA? A. Normalize all flows by dividing them by their respective masses. B. Use only the unit processes with complete data in consistent units. C. Perform unit harmonization and data validation checks. D. Proceed to LCA assuming the discrepancies are negligible. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. ISO 14044, 2006, Clause 4334 4 emphasizes data consistency and quality checks before aggregation. Inconsistent units can distort results during inventory analysis. Option D violates basic data integrity. Selectively excluding data B may introduce bias, and A lacks justification for normalization without context. Question 6. From a practical standpoint, Iselina is conducting an LCA for a line of compostable packaging compared to petroleum-based alternatives. She plans to include ecotoxicity and resource depletion as impact categories. However, she's unsure whether normalization and weighting are mandatory. What does ISO 14044 recommend? A. Both are mandatory steps in LCA. B. Normalization is optional, weighting is prohibited. C. Both are optional and used only when explicitly justified. D. Weighting is required for comparative studies. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. As per clause 4433 and 4434 of ISO 14044, 2006, normalization and weighting are optional but must be used with caution and transparency. Weighting is prohibited in public comparative assertions. Misuse can introduce subjectivity and bias into interpretation, hence strong documentation is required when applied. Question 7. The evolution of data quality requirements in LCA is crucial for establishing credibility. Which of the following aspects is not? A standard data quality indicator in ISO 14044. A. Technological representativeness. B. Time-related coverage. C. Market share dominance. D. Geographical coverage. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. ISO 14044. 2006 Annex B outlines data quality indicators including technological, temporal, and geographical coverage. Market share dominance is not a formal indicator. While it may influence representativeness, it's not listed as quality metric. Misunderstanding this could mislead practitioners regarding acceptable datasets. Question 8. When faced with incomplete primary data for a regional LCA on crop cultivation, Mr. Peterson considers using secondary global data for pesticide emissions. What should he evaluate first according to ISO 14044? A. Whether global data aligns with local climate and practices. B. The peer-reviewed status of the global data. C. If the data supports normalization and weighting. D. Whether the data can be easily accessed for free. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. ISO 14044, 2006 requires assessment of data quality, representativeness, and applicability using global data without verifying local relevance violates clauses 4.3.3.1.4.3.3.4. Peer review, status B, and accessibility D are secondary. Data must be regionally consistent to avoid distorting environmental burdens in modeling. Question 9. According to recent studies on LCA transparency, which principle is critical when reporting assumptions, data sources, and limitations in an LCA intended for public disclosure? A. Protecting proprietary datasets from competitors. B. Ensuring technical accuracy through confidential annexes. C. Providing full traceability and transparency in the main report. D. Using vague descriptors to maintain confidentiality. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Clause 5 of ISO 14044, 2006 stresses transparency and traceability, particularly when LCA results support public comparative assertions. Confidentiality must be balanced against disclosure. Full documentation of data, assumptions, and methods builds trust and enables reproducibility per ISO 14044 Clause 5.2. Question 10. Considering the evidence presented during sensitivity analysis, Mr. Rudge finds that changes in transport distance assumptions significantly alter climate change results. What action should he take next during the interpretation phase? A. Eliminate transport from the model to reduce uncertainty. B. Report the sensitivity and adjust conclusions accordingly. C. Rerun the entire LCA with new baseline assumptions. D. Replace all variable data with conservative estimates. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. ISO 14044, 2006, Clause 5, 3. 2 mandates that sensitivity analysis results must inform interpretation and recommendations. It helps identify significant parameters and supports robust decision-making. Simply removing elements A or changing all data D could compromise accuracy. Full remodeling C may not be necessary if sensitivity is well documented. Question 11. When analyzing the completeness of an LCA model, Opta Alvarez notices that several flows are traced back only to intermediate outputs and not to elementary flows. What issue is most likely present in this situation? A. The unit processes were not modular enough. B. The system boundary excluded downstream processes. C. The model lacks full aggregation to elementary flows. D. Data were normalized too early in the process. Answer. Correct answer, C. Explanation. ISO 14044, 2006, Clause 4331 and 4334 highlight the importance of aggregating inventory data to elementary flows for completeness. Intermediate outputs must be resolved to environmental exchanges, inputs outputs to nature. Without that, environmental impacts can't be accurately assessed during LC. Question 12. In a modern context of data transparency, ISTACHEN is preparing a report for a comparative LCA study between two chemical formulations. One client insists on withholding proprietary emission data. What should ISTACHEN do to comply with ISO 14044 guidelines? A. Replace proprietary data with average industry data. B. Declare limitations and disclose data gaps transparently. C. Use confidential annexes for emissions while summarizing in the report. D. Exclude the sensitive formulation from the study. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. According to ISO 14044, 2006, Clause 5.2, transparency about data limitations and assumptions is critical, particularly in public comparative assertions. While confidentiality is allowed, non-disclosure must be clearly stated, including potential influence on results, to preserve credibility. Question 13. Under the assumption that ISTA Morno is conducting an LCA for an innovative water filtration system in a developing country context, which of the following elements is most critical to defining an appropriate functional unit? A. Market share of similar technologies. B. Volume of water filtered per user per day. C. Expected cost of each system in the local market. D. Social acceptability of filtration methods. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. As per ISO 14044, 2006, Clause 4232, the functional unit must reflect the function and performance of the system, not social or market aspects. For filtration systems, that typically means water volume treated to a defined quality over a defined time or use case. Question 14. To illustrate this point, a life cycle study compared the cradles of gravy impact of two types of flooring, vinyl and natural linoleum. Which of the following is key requirement for making this comparative assertion public under ISO 14044? A. Both products must be from the same geographic market. B. One must have less than 50% environmental impact than the other. C. The study must undergo critical review. D. The functional units must be normalized to weight. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. According to ISO 14044, 2006, Clause 6.1, all comparative assertions disclosed to the public must undergo critical review by an independent third-party panel to ensure fairness, completeness, and methodological consistency. Normalizing by weight D may be misleading for functionally different products. Question 15. A common misconception about weighting in LCA is that it can be used freely to simplify decision-making. According to ISO 14044, how should weighting be applied when used? A. It should be performed after normalization but never reported. B. It must always be based on expert panels or stakeholder values. C. It should only be used internally and with clear documentation. D. It is required to complete an LC. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. ISO 14044, 2006, Clause 4434 states that weighting is optional, must be clearly justified, documented, and only used for internal purposes. It is explicitly prohibited in public comparative assertions due to the subjective nature of weighting values, even if based on expert input. Question 16. When evaluating the quality of secondary data in an agricultural LCA, Hall observes that the dataset lacks information about geographic conditions. Which ISO 14044 quality criterion does this violate? A. Completeness. B. Reproducibility. C. Technological representativeness. D. Geographical coverage. Answer. Correct answer, D. Explanation. ISO 14044. 2006 Annex B includes geographical coverages, a key data quality indicator. If secondary data does not reflect the local climate, soils, and practices, results may be skewed, reducing credibility and accuracy of environmental impact conclusions. Question 17. While examining allocation and multi-output processes, Octolutz considers using economic value-based allocation. What is the most appropriate step before applying this method? A. Determine if the prices are available and current. B. Avoid allocation by system expansion. C. Allocate impacts using mass-based distribution. D. Exclude minor coproducts to simplify modeling. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. ISO 14044, 2006, Cause 4342 emphasizes the hierarchy in handling allocation. First, avoid it via system expansion or subdivision. Only if avoidance is not possible should allocation be done using physical or economic relationships. Jumping directly to economics without exploring system expansion contradicts the standard. Question 18. In the context of interpretation, Stefan identifies that small data errors significantly affect toxicity impact results. What interpretation tool should he use to test the robustness of his LCA conclusions? A. Data normalization. B. Hotspot mapping. C. Sensitivity analysis. D. Functional unit reformulation. Answer. Correct answer, C. Explanation. ISO 14044, 2006. Clause 5.3.2 states that sensitivity analysis is the tool to evaluate how variability in input data affects output results. It helps identify parameters that significantly influence outcomes and is crucial for robust decision-making, especially when uncertainties are high. Question 19. Through the lens of ISO 14044's principles, which of the following best characterizes the role of critical review in comparative LCA studies? A. Verifying whether the inventory balances are correct. B. Confirming the study supports marketing goals. C. Ensuring methodological appropriateness and transparency. D. Eliminating the need for sensitivity analysis. Answer. Correct answer, C. Explanation. ISO 14044, 2006, Clause 6.1.2 states that critical review ensures the methodology, assumptions, data, and interpretations are appropriate, transparent, and scientifically sound, especially for comparative assertions intended for the public. It is not merely a numerical verification or promotional check. Question 20. During the process of LC, Ms. Grant is considering the inclusion of acidification and land use impact categories. What must she ensure before selecting characterization models for these categories? A. That they have been applied in other published LCAS. B. That they are approved by a local environmental agency. C. That the models are scientifically valid and appropriate to the scope. D. That they result in similar magnitudes of impact scores. Answer. Correct answer, C. Explanation. ISO 14044, 2006, Clause 4.4.2 requires scientific validity, transparency, and consistency with the goal and scope when selecting characterization models. Precedent in other studies A. Local preferences B. Or similar scores D. Do not fulfill the core standard requirements for model selection. Question 21. Considering the evidence collected in a critical review of a comparative LCA between two beverage packaging systems, the panel notices that one of the systems includes transportation emissions from the distributor to the retailer while the other excludes it. How should the panel address this inconsistency? A. Accept the inconsistency if the impact is minor. B. Recommend recalculating the excluded transport emissions to ensure comparability. C. Suggest omitting all transportation-related data for neutrality. D. Recommend including retail impacts for both systems to balance the analysis. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. According to ISO 14044, 2006, Clause 6, 1, 2, and 4, 2, 3, 4, comparative studies must ensure equivalent system boundaries for a valid comparison, including transport in only one system biases the results. The panel must recommend harmonizing the boundaries to ensure fair and scientifically justified conclusions. Question 22. During the process of compiling inventory data for a national-level LCA of plastic waste management systems, ISTA ATMED uses different time frames for landfill emissions versus incineration emissions. What is the major concern with this approach? A. It reflects realistic system behavior and should be encouraged. B. It introduces inconsistencies that hinder comparability and interpretation. C. It simplifies long-term projections of emissions. D. It accounts for the uncertainty of long-term emission modeling. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. ISO 14044, 2006, Clause 4334 emphasizes consistency across temporal coverage. Using different time horizons creates distortions and complicates LCA. All emissions should be aligned to a defined, consistent time frame to ensure credible, interpretable comparisons between systems. Question 23. To illustrate this point, ISTA Van Dijk is performing an LCA for a bio-based detergent system and is unsure whether to include infrastructure impacts, e.g., construction of production facilities. What principle should guide his decision? A. Whether infrastructure data are available from previous LCAS. B. If infrastructure significantly contributes to the overall results. C. Whether clients demand a full cradle-to-grave analysis. D. If infrastructure impacts were modeled in similar past studies. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. ISO 14044, 2006, Clause 4, 2, 3, 4 advises that system boundaries should reflect significant environmental contributions. If infrastructure contributes meaningfully, it must be included. If not, it may be excluded with justification. Peer precedent, D, and client preference, C, don't override methodological requirements. Question 24. Through careful analysis of characterization models, ISTA Lopez finds two methods to model human toxicity, one based on use tox and another based on a regional exposure model. What should primarily influence his choice? A. The model most commonly cited in industry studies. B. The one that provides the most conservative estimate. C. Scientific relevance to the study's geographic and scope context. D. Stakeholder preference for one model over another. Answer. Correct answer, C. Explanation. ISO 14044, 2006, Clause 442 requires scientific validity and consistency with the goal and scope when selecting characterization models. Regional relevance ensures accurate representation of exposures. Conservatism or popularity does not determine methodological appropriateness under ISO guidance. Question 25. The traditional approach to determining system boundaries in LCA has evolved. Which of the following now better reflects ISO 14044 guidance on setting system boundaries? A. All processes upstream of the final product must be included. B. Boundaries must include all emissions that occurred during product use. C. System boundaries should be defined based on relevance to the goal and scope. D. Boundaries must exclude infrastructure unless comparison is involved. Answer. Correct answer, C. Explanation. ISO 14044, 2006, Clause 4, 2, 3, 4 clearly states that the inclusion of processes depends on their relevance to the goal and scope, not rigid inclusion rules. The boundary must ensure that significant contributors to environmental impact are captured, improving robustness and comparability. Question 26. Mr. Hansen is reviewing a dataset on metal recycling where electricity inputs are averaged across various national grids. He's concerned about its applicability for country with high renewables. What ISO principle should guide his assessment? A. Review peer-reviewed studies that use similar averages. B. Confirm if data are older than 5 years and update accordingly. C. Evaluate geographical and technological representativeness. D. Use the data as if it's from reputable LCI database. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. ISO 14044. 2006 Annex B highlights geographical and technological representativeness as critical data quality indicators. Using average data from incompatible regions introduces significant error. Proper assessment of data quality ensures reliability, especially for energy-sensitive processes like recycling. Question 27. In response to a client's query, Is Rodriguez compares the land use impacts of soy and palm oil production. She finds palm oil has lower land use per kilogram but higher biodiversity loss. What should she do during the interpretation phase? A. Report only land use to simplify client decisions. B. Apply weighting to combine biodiversity and land use into single index. C. Present both indicators transparently and explain the trade-offs. D. Use normalization to reduce the biodiversity result. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. ISO 14044. 2006 Clause 5.3 requires transparent communication of significant issues and trade-offs. Biodiversity and land use represent different environmental mechanisms. Combining or minimizing one may obscure the complexity of environmental burdens and violate transparency principles. Question 20. Throughout the course of conducting a comparative LCA for reusable versus single-use hospital gowns, Tan discovers significant differences in cleaning assumptions. What is the best practice to ensure the study meets ISO 14044 standards? A. Choose assumptions that favor reusable gowns for environmental credibility. B. Use industry average for cleaning energy across both systems. C. Justify and document assumptions for each system transparently. D. The just assumptions until both options show similar impacts. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. ISO 14044. 2006, Clause 4, 2, 3, and 5. Point 2 emphasize transparency in assumptions. All differences must be clearly documented and justified. Adjusting values to create parity. D is unethical and violates the goal of a scientifically credible, unbiased LC. Question 29. During the normalization step in LCA, Mr. Clark observes that one category, human toxicity, dominates due to regional emissions data. What action should he take next? A. Remove the category to avoid skewed results. B. Normalize against global averages instead of regional. C. Retain the result and investigate the underlying data and causes. D. Apply weighting to balance it with other categories. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. ISO 14044. 2006. Clause 4.4.3.3 advises interpreting normalized results carefully, especially when one category dominates. It indicates a hotspot, not necessarily an error. Investigating causes supports informed conclusions and avoids arbitrary elimination or distortion of valid environmental signals. Question 30. While conducting sensitivity analysis, Dr. Muller identifies that different assumptions about fertilizer production pathways, e.g., fossil-based versus green ammonia, change eutrophication impact significantly. What does this result most clearly demonstrate? A. Problem with the functional unit. B. That LCA weighting is incorrect. C. The importance of scenario modeling and sensitivity analysis. D. That fertilizer should be excluded from the model. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. ISO 14044. 2006, Clause 5.3.2 outlines sensitivity analysis as a tool to identify key parameters influencing impact categories. Fertilizer production methods have distinct emission profiles, making them a critical sensitivity point. Rather than excluding them, modeling alternatives help support robust conclusions.